I'm taller. Scripture reading for today, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Apparently my mic was on before and the baby room got to hear my lovely singing. So that's their punishment or reward. Probably mostly a punishment with my singing ability. So I was given a really wide remit on what to preach on this morning. So David said 55 minutes and no more. So is that correct? Okay, well... All right, so this morning we're highlighting the South Pacific Bible College, SPBC or SPCA or SPC. There's probably some other variations out there of the abbreviations and the initials. And like a number of people floating around today, I'm both a graduate and a faculty member of the college. So I kind of wear two hats at the same time. And I was given a very wide mandate on what to preach on, and this week we were talking a little bit with the students about something called eisegesis, how to wedge what you want to say into the Bible, and so they were given a mandate to really pull me up if I did that this morning. So how do I talk about something that's relevant and also weave in the concept of South Pacific Bible College starting its year off, and we want to honor what we're doing. We love free advertising, so thank you very much. We also love the fact that if you come and spend some time with us and get to know the campus a little bit more if you don't know it, and come and have a look around. So what I thought I'd talk about this morning is stories. And you heard a story out of the text, and we love stories as people. We love telling stories, we love sharing stories, and we love being part of stories. We love seeing how our stories connect and how they interconnect with each other. And when we get together as people, we like to tell stories. Sometimes we tell the same story over and over again. And if you've got children who I can't carry anymore, who could probably carry me now, they like to remind you that they've already heard that story before, Dad. You've already told us that one again and again and again. So, you know, our approach and our engagement with the stories change over time. My story now is I have to wear glasses to read my notes, and I have to see out of the top so I can see you, because I can't do both at the same time. So we are now entering a new phase of my story, so I hope you bear with me on that. We love stories because they bind us together. We love telling them because we hear about other places and other people. We love to be connected to stories with others. We love to be reminded of stories in the past. And sometimes when we go to certain places and certain spaces, we're reminded of stories. And sometimes we smile, and sometimes we remember. Personally, a story I was thinking about yesterday as I drove to the airport. Every time I drive to and from the airport, I drive past where my father used to work. And I always remember that as I drive past his old work site. And I remember my dad. Not that I'd forgotten him, but it's another memory of him. So just where you are, just turn to the person beside you and tell them, we're going to spend 60 seconds, a key story in your life. It can be big, small, personal, private, doesn't matter what you want to share, but just turn to the person beside you and share a story for 60 seconds. Maybe one that's made you or something that's funny. So go. You got 60 seconds according to my clock. No more. All right, that's enough being nice to each other and sharing stories and laughing and smiling. We're Christians after all. We don't like to do too much of that stuff, right? Hey, as I came in this morning, I couldn't help but think of a story that I was remembering of when this building opened. And my family, I came, and I remember standing in that door over there when we used to use it, peering into what in my mind looked like this massive barn-like building structure. And that's the perception of a little boy looking up and seeing something big and huge and something new and novel. And so sometimes we share stories about little things, and they trigger other things, and they connect us to other stories, and they remind us of other stories. And other things connect, and we remember people and places and themes. And so the text we read out this morning, that Sam read out for us, is a famous passage in the Bible. And there's a lot going on there, and I won't read it out again because you've got Bibles, it's still up there. And we're not going to examine all the technical aspects of this passage. There's a lot happening. It's a very famous text. But the key for us is that God has done great things for these people, and they've already forgotten. All right? It's in the book of Deuteronomy, the second telling of the law. We've already told it once, but you forgot. Okay? And we're going to go and we're going to tell it again. And we're going to remind you. And I want you to think about the things that were said here in this book and what we're going to go over today. And I want them to be on your hearts. And I want you to impress them into you. And I want you to talk about them when you sit down. And I want you to talk about them when you walk. I want to tie them as symbols. And I want you to write them on your door frames and your gates. So if you've done any analysis on how we learn, listen to that. We want to talk about it. So if you're a mouthy person, I'm not saying I'm one of those. Don't laugh, Sue. Okay? If you can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, you love that bit, right? That's a great passage. So talk about it. Yes, I've got scriptural mandate to talk. Okay? Or write them out. Maybe you're a hands-on writing sort of a person. Write these things out. We watched Fiddler on the Roof with the students the other day, and they touched the door frame as they left the house because they literally had written some of this stuff on the door frame, and that was a reminder every time they entered and exited the house of what God has done to bless them. And you can see these when you put them in, you're visually reminded. So if you are a visual learner, this is also a way of remembering. So if you are a talker or a hearer, if you're a writer, or if you're a visual learner, impress these stories on your heart and tell others around you and share them with those you encounter, is what God is telling us here in this passage. So I think that's a pretty clear sense that He wants you to share these stories that we're learning about in this text. And these stories are not meant for a single day of the week or year. They are meant to be told about, shared and seen all the time. Do we share stories about God's greatness all the time? Now, I'm not saying that person who randomly turns everything into a story about God with no connection, but I'm saying, are you a person that shares what God has done in your life in all sorts of ways and places to the people you're engaging? When they come into your home, do they see evidence of this is a house of faith, or this is a community of faith? Is that how you operate? That's kind of what that challenge of that text is about. And I think my next slide, a number of years ago, a guy called Christopher Booker wrote a book about stories, and he came up with the idea that there are actually only 7 plots in all the basic books of the world. How much time we got? Oh, I've got plenty of time. I'll read out some of them. Now, before someone comes up to me after and goes, well, actually, there's more than 7. Yes, that's another book, and you can go and read that. But go and read Christopher Booker's book on the 7 basic plots, and he'll tell you about how to come up with the criterion to analyze them and apply them. So that's a task for another day. One of the basic plots of the world is overcoming the monster. So Beowulf, Harry Potter. Overcoming the evil person. The protagonist has got to go out and defeat the evil person. Rags to riches story. The protagonist acquires power, wealth, a mate, loses it all, gets it all back, and has grown in the experience. Aladdin. Many of our fairy tales are like this. The quest. The protagonist and companions set out to acquire an important object or get to a location. They face temptations and other obstacles along the way. The Iliad, Watership Down, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The story of the voyage and return. The protagonist goes to a strange land and after overcoming the threats it poses or learning important lessons unique to the location, returns with experience. The Odyssey, The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. Comedy. If you remember this from your Greek classes, comedy looks like a big smile, light and humorous character with a colourful and cheerful ending, but has a moment of crisis, looks sad, and then it all ends well in the end. So that's a comedy. That's a big smiley face, right? Tragedy. Things look good for the person, and then things seem to get better, but then it ends badly again. Usually because of the character's faults and flaws in his story. The Great Gatsby is a good example of this. It looked good there at one stage. Then the story of rebirth. An event forces the protagonist to change their ways, and they often become a better person. Beauty and the Beast, Iron Man. You know, Iron Man, Tony Stark at the start of Iron Man is not a very pleasant human being, but he has a rebirth. So we love stories as people. We love telling them. We love sharing them. And we've heard some of these stories in different formats multiple times, and yet we still watch the same movie, we still read the same book, we still encounter it again, we get excited. I wonder what's going to happen. Well, this looks like it's going to be a journey of discovery. This is going to go well for the person, right? We don't think it's going to be a tragedy. And so, as we read through Scripture, we'll see that the Israelites started sharing these stories. If you've got your Bibles, turn to Psalm 106. Psalm 106 has 48 verses, and it's just one of the psalms that shares the Exodus and the deliverance and the re-entering of the land, or the entering of the land for the Israelites. See Psalm 77, 78, 104, 5, 106, etc. But in Psalm 106, verse 9, He rebuked the Red Sea and dried it up and led them through the depths as though a desert. Verse 30, and Phinehas stood up and intervened and the plague was checked. Verse 41, He gave them into the hands of the nation and their foes ruled over them. So remember, Psalms are songs. These are the songs they sang. They reminded themselves about what God had done, what God was doing, how active God was in their life. My own favorite letter in the Bible, because I've spent so much time working on it, Jude 1 verse 5. He actually starts off with this phrase, you already know this. You already know what I'm about to tell you. I'm just going to have to remind you again. I want to remind you that the Lord at one time delivered His people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who do not believe. So, we love stories. We love reading about them. And the Bible is full of the same story being told again and again in different ways. And sometimes it's sung, and sometimes it's shorthanded, sometimes it's expanded, and sometimes it's done in new techniques, changes languages, but it's the same basic story being told over and over again about what God is doing and what God has done, and what God will do, in a sense, what is promised forward. I think that's what I find the most interesting about stories, when we think about how they intersect with each other. You know, when you meet somebody new, you often try to figure out how you might know each other from another place, or how you might have different connections. Oh, I see on Facebook you know this person. How do you know them? Oh, I went to that school. Do you know so-and-so? I grew up there. And if the things get smaller and smaller, it's like, I like that TV show as well. Right? We keep on looking for a connection with somebody. We try to tell stories to bind us together. So what story should we tell? Well, I think today should be about South Pacific Bible College. All right? So there's my tie-in, team. I hope that works. Okay? Stories about how this congregation here has been part of the South Pacific Bible story for over 40 years. Now that's a commitment. That's a group of people that have made a decision to engage and be part of something bigger and different from what they are. That's not a one-off event. That's not a on-the-whim moment. That's 40 plus years of stories. Last time I was visiting the college, we talked about names and people that have come and gone. Some of them have passed on. Some of them are doing other things in other ministries. And this congregation has been part of that. One of the stories I shared was when I was a student here. I think it was during one of the reunions. There were some of the lads, they wanted to wrestle with me. I was 19 then, so I was a little bit stronger. Don't tell my 16-year-old that, but because he'll just hurt me again. And there used to be a passage there that came down, and the boys lured me out. A very young Austin, sorry. And one of the other boys jumped on me, and just as he jumped on me, I flicked him off, and he went flying out and broke his arm. Our youth group was a bit rough in those days. But the good news is, his dad was very good about it, seeing how he was one of my lecturers. Sorry, Terry. Sorry to put more pressure on your pate and break your son's arm. But it was all good japes and fun. Yeah, till someone breaks an arm. But you know, when you got sons, you expect broken bones, right? 40 years of stories, financial stories, supporting students, wrapping people around who are from a long way from home, giving them smacks with meter rulers if they need it. Stories about how students have changed, been transformed by God, relationships, and encounters within this congregation. Stories about people that are going to take those home to where they go next. Stories about people being different when they finished up at their time at the college, and you were part of that as a community. And I bet you some of you who've been around a while can sit back and think about all the students you've encountered, and therefore they've gone on to marry and have children or do great ministry, and they are doing other things now in their lives, and you're part of those stories. When we tell stories, when we engage with each other, we connect with each other. We're part of that story now permanently. And so people are always retelling stories. And maybe the question for you today is, how do I fit into the next story, or what's next? New students turning up, new students coming along, new encounters. So, in conclusion, come along to the open day today. See some of the faces. Be part of our story. Re-engage if you've stepped out for a while, or think about new ways you can encounter. This congregation, the people here and the people that have gone on before us are part of the South Pacific story. So tell those stories. Share those stories with those around you. Share what God's been doing in your life. And keep telling, showing, and sharing the stories of what God has done for you. All those years ago, the people were reminded to keep telling the story, to keep telling what God was doing, and keep telling the good ways God has worked with them, so that those stories wouldn't be forgotten by the next people they encounter. So that's my challenge for you today. Thank you.